Hello and welcome. My name is Father William Maestri, and this is another edition of Overfed and Undernourished. The question before us in this particular episode is a serious one, and it has gained a great deal of traction, certainly in recent months. And the question is America a racist society? Is America institutionally, systemically racist? Now, in order to at least begin to think about that, let me offer you a personal experience and also a tidbit from our contemporary popular culture, the ever-present television commercial. First, the experience. The other day, someone who I hadn't seen in quite a while called me and asked me if I wanted to go to lunch. Well, being a priest and never one to pass up a free lunch, I said, sure, of course, let's go. So we went, and it was a restaurant that I was not familiar with, had never been there. And we got there and sat down and ordered and so on after some time. And the food finally came out, and it looked fine until we tasted it. And to be kind and polite about it, it was awful. That it was, in fact, I would say it was unedible. And I looked over at the person who had invited me, and I said, does this taste kind of strange or funny to you? And he said, oh yeah, mine does. He said, this is the worst restaurant, I think, in the city. He says, I come here all the time. I take my friends and relatives. I said, really? I said, you know this restaurant is terrible, but you come here and you take your relatives and your friends and you know the food is terrible. He said, yeah. He said, it's something I do all the time. Now, should ever that person call me again, I will either, one, never go to lunch with that person again, or secondly, if we do, it won't be to that restaurant. Why would I go back to have a food experience, as we say today, that was simply unedible? The second, by way of commercial, the commercial has been running a great deal here in Southern California, and it's for a beer. And the setup is they show you a chef, and he's an executive chef. And they introduce the gentleman, they give you his name, and they tell you that he grew up in Guatemala. And he left there at a very early age, I think around 12, in order to hopefully secure a better life with his family. And so they came to the United States. And he started out as a dishwasher. And from a dishwasher, he went to sous chef, he rose through all the ranks there to an executive chef in a very fine California restaurant. And the commercial ends by extolling his virtues of hard work and determination and dedication, which is terrific. That's the American story. And of course, left out of the commercial is the idea, where else on the face of the earth would you have such a chance? Not only of probability, but if you have those qualities of character, that it's going to be a probability that you will certainly rise because of your skill and because of your ability. Now we hear now those two stories are connected. Those two instances that I'm offering you are connected. The first is that America is institutionally and systemic racist. Now let's unpack that a bit. What does that really mean? Well, first of all, why is our problem, if you want to call it that, our problem is immigration, not migration. We don't keep people in we have to regulate the flow of people who want to come in. No more would I go back to that terrible restaurant than if this is such a systemic, evil place, why would so many make America the first and most prized stop on their migration from where they were born? Because whether the propaganda says it, whether the media says it, whether ideologues say it, whether the elites in academia say it, whether the activists say it, America is the land of hope and opportunity. And it's a terrible thing to start off with the idea. It really is. That America is systemically racist and is institutionally weighted against blacks, people who are red, people who are yellow, people who are brown, or some variation thereof. And that basically the game is rigged for white folk. It's white supremacy. It's white privilege, and so on. Because you know what it says to the guy in the commercial? It says, you think you made it, but just think how far you could have gone. You probably could have owned a hotel, but you happen to be the wrong color skin. Or the young person who's sitting in a classroom, who's black, or who's brown, or red, or yellow, and they study hard. They come home, they do their homework, they grow up with the idea of having a good job, a skill, maybe go to college, university, to really make something of themselves. And what are we saying? Don't waste your time because the game is rigged. Well, why would I do that? Why would I study? Why would I budget my time? Why would I sacrifice all the things that I could be doing, that others may be doing, when at the end of the day, I'm not going to get across the goal line? Well, it's foolish. Why would I ever do that? And so it's a built-in story of futility, low expectations, of failure, of despair. It's a story of despair. To say that America is systemically racist and institutionally rigged says there's no need for you to try, because no matter how much you try, how talented you are, how much effort you put out there, at the end of the day, you're not going to grasp the brass ring. You're just not going to you're not going to get it, because there's always going to be a blockage to keep you from crossing the goal line. This is an incredibly depressing story. It ensures continuation, generationally, of failure. And it demeans all of the effort and all of the dedication of so many parents and grandparents, of teachers, of people who have invested so much in opening opportunities through education, through the teaching of virtue and moral values, of being good role models for children, especially as we call them, at-risk children. I prefer to call them children with tremendous potential if we only open the opportunity and encourage, not discourage. And that's number one. Number two, it's a complete denial of history, and I realize that's our game right now, is historical denial, historical amnesia, down with the statues, down with history, and so on. But it denies that from the time when the first colonist came to the United States to the present day, 2020, in October of 2020, that nothing has changed. In fact, if anything, it's gotten worse. It's more violent, it's more discriminatory, it's more unjust, it's seething. The United States has become one great southern Alabama back in the 1950s and 60s, and the people who are in charge are Bull Connor. What a terrible distortion. how many lives down through those centuries have marched, sacrificed, died, so that they, but not only they, those who came after them would have greater opportunities and greater freedoms. And we see that now. We see that now. Is America perfect? Of course not. As James Madison said, if men were angels, there would be no need for government or laws. But men are not angels. Men are fallible, limited, sinful, flawed human beings. But, we have the hope of redemption. We have the hope of improving, of leaving the world better than when we found it. And I think that that's very important, that we look beyond ourselves in the present moment. We're not self-absorbed generationally or self-absorbed even individually, but we are looking beyond the moment. And it's a terrible disservice to all of those witnesses down through the centuries who have sacrificed so much to make this world better, to say it's worse or nothing has changed. That's a terrible blight and a terrible act of being so unappreciative of those who sacrifice so much. And the third point that I would like to make to you is this. There is, in relation to systemic institutional racism, a belief now, and it's gaining traction in the universities, in courses that are being taught, it's even infiltrated business. Some of the leading businesses are now involved in this. That racism is a genetic condition. Specifically, it's a racial factor. You are born racist if you are white. Now, as crazy as that may strike you, there's a whole kind of superstructure of academia, of wonderful academic terms and fancy words that surround that. Now think about that for a moment, please. If you are white, you are genetically a racist. Now, if someone could please explain this to me, and I'm open to hearing it, because I've heard crazy things in my life. I've probably said maybe one or two, not more than that. But once upon a time, we were told that black people are genetically inferior. They are born that way. And there's nothing you can do. And there are certain jobs that black people are fit for, and certain jobs that they will never do. Now, is that repugnant to you? Oh. Would you hold that view in public? Would you not give a person who said that in public a kind of second, third view and then get away? Of course you would. But today, if you are white, you are genetically a racist. Now, think about that for a moment. If you are genetically a racist, do you see the end game? The end game is not, I repeat, it is not the redoing of society that you hear about. We have to have institutional reform. We have to, in the logo today, we have to reimagine society. That's, if only that were the end game. The end game is to make a new human being. Because the only way you can remove that genetic flaw is through eugenics. You have to make a new person. You have to make and fashion a new human being. Not in the image and likeness of God, but in the image and likeness of our social and sense of what is just and fair and good. In other words, we will now create humanity. But why stop there? Why stop with racism? Why not, I don't know, people who have brown hair, people who are left-handed? Why not people who are slow? Maybe people who are smart. Maybe they're too smart. So we'll level everyone down. Where does all of this stop? We tried eugenics. It was very fashionable in the 18th and 19th century and into the 20th century here in the United States, among many of the leading progressive intellectuals, like Woodrow Wilson, by the way, who held deeply racist views. Princeton University, that had the Woodrow Wilson School of Foreign Policy, they took his name down after years of being one of the leading schools in the study of foreign policy. When you read some of the things he said, but he is often looked upon as the intellectual father of the progressive movement. But what you have to do is you have to create a new human being. We hear that slavery is America's original sin. The difficulty there is it's not the Christian sin, original sin. It's not the biblical original sin. Because the secular version of original sin for America, there is no redemption. I don't care what you do. You will always, even if you are the greatest philanthropist, you're the greatest advocate of social justice, whatever that is, and so on, there's always a hidden motive. There's always a taint of the corruption there, of racism. Again, why would you ever try? Other than to walk around in a state of perpetual guilt, which is what you see. In the biblical version of original sin, there is a redeemer. There is redemption. In the secular version, there is none. There is nothing but a constant antagonism, a constant division, a constant suspicion. Is that really the kind of society and world we want to live in? But more importantly, is that really the kind of society and world that we want to bequeath to those who come after us? Goodness, I hope not. Because if you look at the history of this country, the desire was our time on earth is not simply our own and not simply for ourselves. It's for those who come after us. It's for those who come after us. And so why would this man, who is now the executive chef in this restaurant, why would he come here, in the words of the commercial, to look for a better life? Why would he come to a racist, institutionally rigged society? Why wouldn't he go to Sweden or Argentina or somewhere else? No, he came here, and his family came here. We don't go back to bad restaurants. We don't come here because this country is systemically and institutionally racist. We come here because, as Lincoln said, America is the last best hope of mankind. It is still the last best hope for reaching our potential and making the world better and better for those who come after us.